Welcome to NC Spin Perspectives, opinions from thought leaders in North Carolina. We're talking today with Joe Stewart, Executive Director of North Carolina Free Enterprise Foundation. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Tom.
You've been involved in a lot of levels of state government, from running campaigns to the executive level of state agencies, in liaison with organizations that work with state government. How would you describe the political climate in Raleigh and in North Carolina right now?
Well, probably the most interesting dynamic of North Carolina's political landscape today is just how much it's changed, and changed to be more reflective of the national political landscape, in part as a result of dramatic growth in our state and the diversification that's brought of our population. It's a very different place than the North Carolina I grew up in, and that's coupled with a younger generation's very different perspective on partisan politics. It's a different place. It's a better place in many regards, but it's certainly not the North Carolina that I knew as a young man.
We're trotting on some new ground. When the Republicans took over after 100 and some years of Democratic control, when the Republicans took over the legislature and then finally in 2012 won the governor's office, there were a lot of people that were predicting we were going to have days filled with sweet tea and cookies, that everybody was just going to be really happy. Well, that hasn't turned out to be the case, and in fact, there's been quite a bit of acrimony that has taken place in state government. The question is it any better or any worse than what we've experienced in times past?
Well, I think anytime there's a transition in power, there's going to be a little bit of a disruption as people get to know their job and get to know what the level of responsibility they have. Even the highest levels of government, the governor, the president pro tem of the Senate, the speaker, it's all on the job training. There's very little preparation in terms of coming to understand what your real role and responsibility is. So I'm not surprised there's been a little numping of noggins here and there. But I think by and large the changes that have taken place are probably reflective of North Carolina, the way it's changed.
They're not getting along any better or any worse than previous years?
I think if you were to talk to Mike Easley or Beverly Perdue, they could tell you that sometimes a Democratic governor negotiating with a Democratic controlled legislature is just as acrimonious as it is when you're negotiating across party lines. And some part of this is, I used to believe very strongly that our system of government worked despite the fact that there are three branches of government, and now I believe it works because there are three branches.
Well, okay, I want to talk about that because Governor McCrory has recently been very concerned about what he sees as a usurping of the separation of the balance of powers. The recognition that the legislature now wants to get into the appointive process of appointing boards and commissions and taking away some of that executive authority from the governor's office. Is he right to be concerned about this?
Well, I think the balance of power between the executive and the legislative branch is something that's always going to be a subject of discussion between governors and between legislators. I think
but it's widely acknowledged we have the weakest governor of almost any state in the country.
Well, and in fact, because we have such a long-standing history of wanting to elect our executive branch leadership, it has sort of diffused what is normally a concentration of power in the governor's office when the governor does control things like public education or agricultural policies and those sorts of things. So the fact that we have 10 statewide executive branch offices that are all elected probably does diffuse the power a little bit. And you know, it's not uncommon for legislative leaders to feel, and you know, I've served in the capacity of representing state agencies and industries before the General Assembly. The truth is, the challenge for a legislator is they can change the law, but they have very little ability to actually see through the implementation of some change they want. That's the executive branch responsibility. So I think sometimes it's born out of a frustration. They have the idea, they write it down on paper, and they all vote for it, but they're not feeling like it's being implemented.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen.
That's
as we saw by State Auditor Beth Wood's report just recently, that some enacted changes in purchasing and controls had not been effectuated. And we see it in various and sundry other agencies of state government.
Exactly.